All right, welcome to the Nothing Burger podcast with me, Chris. I have a really good friend of mine, James Baker, who's been an excellent mentor for me. And for those who looking for some professional, some personal, and financial advice, you're not going to want to miss this. James, how's it going?
I'm doing better than I deserve, and happy to be talking with you, my friend. It's a pleasure to chat with you about anything you want to talk about.
Yeah,
It's
so
always good to see you.
um, you've been a long time friend, so obviously I'm really biased, but a really good friend of mine. You've been there for me during my family needs and all that. So, but you're honestly one of the best leaders that we have in our department for sure. So, and obviously, like I said, I'm biased, but uh, those who don't know you should, and those who do know you know what I'm talking about. So, I had an English paper that I had to write, and we had to pick a mentor, and that was easy for me. Um, so, I have some questions for you, and let's see how you let's see how the answers go. So, number one is what motivates you, just in general. What motivates you?
Well, it hadn't always been the case that it is that the things that motivate me today motivate me, but I think as I've matured and grown as an individual, um, I've found that the proper motivation is a motivation to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. Heard it said in a lot of different ways, but one of my favorite ways is that it would be inappropriate to compare yourself to who somebody else is today when you're thinking about where you are and how to sort of evaluate how you're doing. The most appropriate way to do that would be to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And as I've lived my life and gone through progressions of being a father and a husband and a police officer, and from the ground level street type police officer to a sergeant and a lieutenant. Um, to me, the biggest motivating factor is how can I be the best version of myself in all of those different areas. And so, what motivates me is just the desire to be a better version of myself in whatever iterations that of my life that I might be making endeavors in at that point in time. And I think those categories that I just mentioned, the husband, the father, the the supervisor, the police officer in general, and just as a man, um, I want to be the best versions of those things that I can be for the people that I come in contact with, and that obviously the ones I love and are a part of my life, but also the people that I run across and have opportunity to influence and make an impact in their life on a regular basis.
That's pretty thorough there. um, what are your weaknesses and how do you overcome them?
Oh wow! So one of the things that one of the things that has become obvious to me that I'm not as good at as I would like to be. It's become more obvious to me as I've become a supervisor. Is is the ability to confront situations and people that that are my responsibility, and that it's my responsibility to manage and or supervise, that for some reason might be falling short of what they should be doing, without it becoming something that that I become emotionally involved in, or that if you have to take corrective action, it one of the things that's tempting for me to do is to be angry at that person, uh, and and sometimes when I'm angry at that person for what it is that they've done or failed to do, um, the action that I'm taking to try to correct whatever the problem is less effective than it might otherwise be. And I find myself getting frustrated to the point that I want to almost disregard them and disregard uh, their importance and sort of just I get frustrated and it makes me want to give up on them or not pay them a whole lot of mind. I'm really motivated when people want to be better and they see something that I might be able to offer them that would help them be better. But when somebody is less than motivated to be the best that they can be, oftentimes it's easy for me to get frustrated and not make the same effort to help them be better as I would and maybe should otherwise be doing. So, to give up on somebody or to you hear people in our industry talk about things like, these people, I'm not going to mention them by name, but they'll say things like, I've got nothing for that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's a peer, not as big of a deal, but when you're a supervisor, you can't really have that attitude that I've got nothing for that guy, because you're still responsible for the things that they do, their performance levels. And so one of my biggest weaknesses is trying to make sure that I don't get frustrated and that I try to continue to try to do my best to get the most out of those people that I'm responsible for, and not let my frustration keep me from seeing what my responsibilities are and still trying to get the best out of those people. So one of the people that was really good at this was a previous captain I had, Toby Kroger. I love this guy, man. This guy was really, really effective. I learned a lot from him, and he was really motivating. I'm not as good as he is at confronting people that are not doing the right things, and getting right to the point and being direct without it sounding like I'm angry, which a lot of times I become angry at those people. And so controlling my emotions in those situations, I think is probably the biggest weakness I have, especially from a professional standpoint. From a personal standpoint, I would say, that's a really good one. I tend it might be something that's similar in the sense that I get frustrated with people that seem to be operating on an emotional basis rather than a logical and reason based basis. I think my personality is more of a logical and reasoned one, and so when people react in an emotional sense or they develop their ideas and thoughts about something from an emotional standpoint, and when I think about it, it doesn't make any sense. It's hard for me to go the extra mile to relate to them and try to get them to see what we're talking about or the point that I'm trying to make. And so maybe just avoiding frustrations and not letting my frustrations deter me from what I'm trying to accomplish, whether it's in a professional manner or personal manner. And oftentimes that it seems like there's an overlap, because oftentimes I think that has a lot to do with personality differences, but trying to be effective across those different personality types that maybe differ from mine a little bit is probably my biggest challenge and weakness at this point. The thing I need the most improvement on, for sure.
Did you mention on how to overcome them?
Well, I'm not sure I can list ways to overcome them, except for to recognize that that's what's going on when you're starting to feel those ways, and to, sort of fight against it. It's almost like anything that you would do when your tendency is to not want to do it. Discipline kicks in, being intentional and deciding I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to I'm going to control myself, even though it's not what comes natural, or, even though I might want to say, what are you, a freaking idiot?
Yeah.
It recognizing when your initial inclination or your initial thoughts on what you want to say aren't the best way to get to the end result that you're looking for, and then suppressing whatever urges you have in that area that would make you feel better, but that wouldn't be productive. Um, it's a discipline thing, I think, an internal discipline thing, and so
Hmm.
perhaps just purposing and being determined to be disciplined in those times so that you can be as effective as you need to be, whether it's as a leader or a partner or a mentor or whatever else, whatever other responsibility you happen to be fulfilling at that point in time. At least for me, when I've been able to be most successful at overcoming those challenges, it's been because I put aside sort of my personal ego and or feelings and thought, all right, I need to be effective here rather than just right, or rather than just win. I mean, think about this. If you get in an argument with your spouse, um, you don't, if you're really thinking long term about it, you don't want to win at the expense of the person you're against losing, because then, well, you're married to a loser, right? So what you want to do is come to some sort of agreement or resolve the situation in a way where you can both, right? And you hear people say jokingly about being married, well, you can either be right or you can be happy, or
Happy wife, happy life kind of thing.
right. And that's ridiculous, because nobody should just get run over or just agree to everything so that their wife can always be right. But what you don't want to do is necessarily approach it as a contest where somebody wins and somebody loses. If you're trying to be effective, what you want is for that person to get what you're trying to give to them, and for the path forward to be something that you both are willing to continue with and are happy with. And so you got to be satisfied with the results. You have responsibilities, both professionally and if you're talking about personally, you have responsibilities as a leader to fulfill. But you also want to be effective at that, and you don't want to just win at the expense of the other person feeling demoralized,
Yeah.
or losing their motivation because they just have to do it because you won the argument or because you're the rank and you said so. Those kind of things, right? So if you can set aside your personal ego, and that's a difficult thing to do, speaking personally, and so,
Yeah.
but if you can realize that there's benefit in both of you feeling satisfied and happy with the way the thing ends, then in the long term you end up being better off. And so it's really just a matter of discipline and being thoughtful and having the long term goal in mind, which is a long term continued successful journey and or endeavor.
Hmm. I think what I struggle with as a leader is the things that I expect from my subordinates um, is what I would have been as as a subordinate to my leader, and I feel like when they fall short, that it's more of like a disrespect or like I wouldn't have done that kind of thing. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I kind of take it personal
Yeah,
because I feel like, well, I wouldn't have done that if I was in your shoes. So that's the hardest part for me as being a leader, is understanding that not everybody's going to be like me.
true.
And everybody's got different circumstances, and patience has been one of the hardest things for me, And I can't tell you how many times I was about to send an email out and would call you and say, "Should I send this?" And you're like, "Yeah, don't send that."
Right.
Sometimes I would, and I would still get in trouble, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's hard. But we're still human, just because we wear, whatever leadership role we have, we're still human, So
True.
we're gonna make
Right.
mistakes.
Correct. And we do. But I mean, think about it like this. Um, if you think of, you love sports, so think about this sports analogy. Uh, the greatest players in whatever league you might want to consider, and I know you like basketball, so let's say Michael Jordan, for example, Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas. These are three examples of people I can think of that were coaches but weren't good coaches. And one of the reasons why is because they were so good that their expectation of what their players should be was measured against what they were, and nobody, in fact, most people don't live up to that. They don't have
Mhm.
the same talent. They don't have the same drive, and so their abilities as players, it didn't translate to their ability as a leader. Now, I'm not saying that you're the Michael Jordan of
Yeah.
supervisors, but you see what I'm saying. If you have a
I'm sure
standard,
most would agree with you too.
I'm not saying Michael Jordan of deputies would be the right analogy, I think, but in your professional career, but my point is that it's not effective if your expectations for other people are compared against yourself, just like it's not fair to you if your expectations of yourself are compared to other people. You have to compare yourself, just like you have to compare yourself, going back to what I said earlier, to who you were yesterday rather than somebody else today, and see if you're improving. You have to sort of give your people and or the person you're dealing with, you have to give them that same grace and benefit of the doubt that what you're wanting from them is for them to improve from who they were yesterday, not necessarily to perform at the level that you necessarily did, because it's just not the case that everybody has the same capabilities.
Mhm.
Now you can help, and so what you're wanting to help them do is be the best version of themselves versus a carbon copy of who you are. And if they're capable of being who you are, then and they're falling short of that, that's one thing. But most people are unique individuals, and so most people, it's not fair to look at them that way. And so you just got to keep those kinds of things in mind, I think.
Yep. Um, what are you? I know what your strengths are, but what are your strengths, professionally and personally? What do you
Um,
think they are?
oh,
What do you feel they are?
that's a really good question. So I feel like I'm a fairly thoughtful person, and I've developed over the years. I've become better at being patient and recognizing that, especially as a supervisor, you you're responsible for the production of the people that are underneath you, and so it's your production. Their production is your production. If they're doing good, then and doing what they're supposed to do, then that means you're doing what you're supposed to do and leading them. And so just having a patience, the patience to sort of realize that what I need to do is get the most out of this person and find the place on this team where they can benefit, where they can be the most benefit for the overall goal, the overall mission. And so uh, I think my ability to sort of be thoughtful about it, to think a little bit about things before I act on them or before I choose a course of action has been really helpful. I think I think I have a fairly calm personality. I don't get too worked up too quickly, and I also think that the things I've gone through in life have sort of made it really obvious to me that it's easy to have the wrong impression at first. And so before you become too certain about something,
Mm-hmm.
It's wise to consider how you might be wrong and under what circumstances uh, the situation could be different than what you first perceived it. And so, to the extent that I've been able to sort of learn those lessons, that's been a real help for me, and helped me be more effective, I think, than I would have been otherwise. Um, I've had some really good mentors, and so you talk about there's a lot of talk today about privilege that people have and things like that. But look, I grew up in a wonderful household. I had a great example as a father. I've had some great supervisors that I've learned a lot from, that were patient with me, and that didn't beat around. They didn't lie to me. They told me the truth. And then I've made mistakes that I've been fortunate enough not to be destroyed by, but been able to then learn from, and think, and what I'm talking about. And something happens, and
Mm-hmm.
that you made a mistake, but by some stroke of luck, it didn't go in the worst case scenario type of way. And then you can look at that and go, man, that could have gone way different. And so I've been fortunate in some of those circumstances. I've had both situations happen. I've had some really bad situations happen, but I've also been fortunate enough to not have the worst case scenarios happen. I've had great examples. I had a great set of parents. I've had some great supervisors, and all of those things have sort of helped me to have an experience toolkit, so to speak, that I can really draw from, and maybe it's a personality trait to be more deliberate and thoughtful, but I certainly can't just attribute it all to that. I've had some really good examples. I've had some really good mentors, and so I attribute it in a large degree to those things. And then, of course, there's the grace of God in my life, and you know, uh, and what I mean by that is that you know we have to do things right, but when I look at where my life is versus where it could be based on the mistakes that I've made and the silly and stupid things that I've done that I never should have done. And I'm not talking about just mistakes you make out of ignorance. I've done stuff that I knew I shouldn't do and suffered the consequences from it. But, when I say the grace of God, what I mean is that when we stop doing the stupid stuff and we start doing the little things that we know are the right things to do, that we're not just able to stop having bad things happen. We're able to flourish in spite of that. And so I look at the last 10, 12 years of my life, and I think, 10 or 12 years ago, there's no way I could have imagined that I would be where I'm at now. Even if I had at that time tried to predict in the most optimistic way, man, if everything goes great, what would it be like? I wouldn't have even been able to come close to where things are. And so the fact that things have been able to go so well, and that I've been so blessed, it really is. It's the grace of God. We have to do the right things, but there's laws in the universe that help us flourish in spite of our mistakes and in spite of the things we've done wrong, if we'll just stop doing those things and start doing the things right that we know to do right.
Well, that'll lead me to my next question. Which ties right into it, is how do you handle setbacks or failures?
Well,
to those that are struggling, or those right now who are in a bad season right now,
yeah. Well, there's no question that life is hard and that there are things inherent to being a human being in the world that we live in that are beyond our control and that can cause us trouble. Everybody's going to get sick at some point in their life. People you love are going to get sick. People that you know and love are going to die. bad things happen that aren't necessarily a result of mistakes we make. It's the world we live in. It's the nature of being a human being. But I think that if you can separate those things and realize that bad things happen, even if you're doing everything right, or doing everything you know to do right, everything you know that's right, and focus on the things that you can control and the things you're doing that might be counterproductive to your success, then I think that's all you can do, because it's not, you can't, there's no way to avoid trouble, so to speak, quote unquote, in life. There's no way to avoid problems. Things happen completely beyond your control. But if you focus on the things that you can control, and you try to become the best version of yourself, then what that does, it doesn't help you avoid the things you can't control, but what it does is it best orients you to face those things, and in the most successful way that you can, come through those things and make the most of them. And so it's not just that every cloud has a silver lining. It's that trouble's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think the state and nature of being is that bad things are going to happen. So that means it's incumbent upon us, and then it puts us in the best position if we're striving to aim up and become the best versions of ourselves. Jordan Peterson helped me a whole lot with this. I love that guy. I've seen him a couple of times in person, have all of his books. I have read all of them front to back, except for Maps of Meaning, which is a high level psychology book. It's a doctorate level stuff. And so I just haven't read it completely and as thoroughly as I would like to. It takes a long time if you're reading that to really understand it. But that guy's really good at helping sort of frame the outlook you should have towards a mindset of being the best version of yourself as being the way forward and the way to best orient yourself for the inevitable things that are going to be difficult in life. Life is going to be difficult. There's no way to avoid it. But what you can do is make sure that when those things become difficult, or when things do become difficult in life, that you're best situated, you're best oriented, and you have prepared yourself in the best possible way to be the person you need to be in those hard times.
Yeah, I agree. With what happened with my wife, with COVID, my advice to anyone struggling, is, because a lot of people told me, we don't know how you dealt with, like, how you did what you did, how you can be sane and deal with it. But well, anyway, my advice is that you're stronger than you think you are. I think, we coast through life kind of like, hoping nothing tragic happens. Like, oh, you look at the news, oh, I'm glad that didn't happen to me or my family. But things like that do happen to you, and tragic things do happen. And my advice is that you're a lot stronger than you think you are. Looking back, I don't even know how I dealt with it either. But again, you just take it one day at a time. So
Yeah,
it's, a good, strong support system. A strong circle of friends and family. It helps. But the day-to-day grind, man, it's you just got to take it one day at a time.
Well, I have a couple of other things to say about that, and I don't want to take credit for this because, again, this is Jordan Peterson stuff, but I think it's right, and that is that a lot of times in the society that we currently find ourselves in, there's a big focus on happiness, but and they even mention the Constitution. Man, you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they equate what I think the founding fathers were really saying with the idea that it's happiness. I think the founding fathers were a lot wiser than that, because they didn't say you have a right to life, liberty, and happiness. You have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so what I think is really, really important, and that what gives you meaning in your life and gives you purpose in your life is taking on responsibility and seeing yourself progress towards goals that you have. And if you take on responsibility, it gives you purpose. And so if you have purpose in life, you can weather any storm. You can deal with anything. And I think that the answer to your question, or the question people may have about how did you deal with that, we don't know how you dealt with that, was that you had a purpose. You had responsibilities as a husband and a father that you had, that drove you forward, and that gave you the strength you needed. And so if you can in your life find purpose and meaning, you'll have contentment, you'll be motivated, and you'll have something more valuable than happiness. And happiness is something that you should enjoy when you have it, but you shouldn't expect. It's not the default nature of life. The default nature of life is pain and suffering. Your kids, if something happens to your kids, man, it's painful. Something happens to your wife, it's terrible. Bad things happen. But if you have purpose and meaning in your life, then that gives you the strength and the initiative, or the internal fortitude and integrity to endure those things. And I forget, some famous person said it, but you can endure any what, or if you have a why. So if you know why you're doing what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it takes to get there. You have a purpose, you have a meaning, and if you find what that is, and you take on responsibility, then you will have purpose. And when you know what your purpose is, then it doesn't matter what you have to encounter. You know what your purpose is, and you have the strength, and you find the strength to fulfill your purpose. It gives you meaning, and that's where I think the real satisfying things of life come into play, and happen for you, is when you have purpose and meaning. Then it doesn't matter what you go through if you know what your purpose and what the meaning, what your job and your duty and your purpose in this world is.
Yeah, you're spot on there. You got a few other questions here. I'm trying to see which ones. What books would you recommend for someone looking to grow?
I love this question. I'm going to go back to Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. You read that book. It's super practical, and it's easy to read. You don't have to be a intellectual to read it and understand it, but it's really good advice, man. It's just sound, grounding, beneficial information. He followed that up with a 12 More Rules book that I own as well. But I love those two books for sure. What's funny?
Well, it's 12, and then he added another 12, so it's like 24 now, right? So,
well, I saw an interview with him one time, and he said he's when he sat down to first start this, he had something like 150 or something like that. And he thought, I can't write a book, 150 rules for life. So he said, let me find 12, the 12 that, that he started off with. And then he wrote a follow-up with 12 more. I guess he could write another 10 of those books and still not exhaust all of the things that he wanted to say.
Save them for another book, I guess.
Right. But those two books are great. If I don't want to sound too religious here, but the longer I live, the more I realize that when people say life doesn't come with an owner's manual, I think they're wrong, because I think the longer I live and the more I reflect on the things I was taught as a young child, the more I realize that there's nothing we encounter in life that the Bible doesn't address, and the Bible doesn't give us the answers. If we know how to look and we know how to understand what it's saying, the Bible gives us the answers to all of those things, and gives us the way to not avoid every problem that comes in life, but to make sure that we're able to handle every problem in life in the most efficient and effective way possible, and helps us live the best example of a human existence that we can possibly live. And so I would say the Bible's up there with books that if you develop a habit of consulting and reading and putting into practice, will make a big difference if you have struggles in your life. And so, yeah, I put those in reverse order, I'm sure, in terms of importance.
That's what I was like kind of laughing, because I'm like, Peterson was first, but the Bible's second. So,
Well,
no, I know what you mean.
But honestly, the Bible. One of the things Jordan Peterson talks about is the Bible and what the stories in the Bible really tell us. And it's not a matter of whether an individual story is true on the surface, meaning, did this person really exist, and did this series of events really happen in exactly this order? And in a lot of circumstances, it is a historic document that documents things that literally happened in the way that they said they happened. But the stories in the Bible are true in a much deeper way than that. They're true because not just that they were true at the time, they're true all the time. The stories in the Bible, they talk about truths that they're true then, they're true now, and they'll always be true. And so, it's true on a much deeper level than a story I could tell you about something that happened to me at work today. That's true on the surface, but it's what long-term meaning does it have in anybody's life? It doesn't. But the Bible's true in a much deeper way than something like that. And so it certainly is important. And Jordan Peterson does a lot of what would you call it, speeches and talks about the stories in the Bible. And honestly, man, that guy, it's funny to me that those are the first three, the three things that come to mind when I think about books, because I've often, when just talking with my wife or my father or some other, other people about him and my experiences seeing him live and reading his books, that guy might be a modern day prophet. Like he's literally saying things that are true on such a deep level, and they're so impactful on such a deep level. It's hard not to imagine that guy's not a gift from God, because, it speaks to young men. It speaks to young people in general, men and women, the things he has to say. And they're consistent. The things he says are actually consistent with a lot of the biblical teachings that I grew up not really understanding or wondering if they were really true. It explains. In fact, he doesn't cause me to question the things I grew up learning or being taught. It more appropriately would be described as he actually makes me understand why the things that I didn't know why they were true, but my parents always told me. It helps you understand why those things are actually true. And so I love the guy. He's not more important than the Bible. I did list those in reverse order, but those are all the Bible, super impactful from a practical stance. Jordan Peterson is very helpful. In one particular area, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover changed my life. And I get mad at him all the time when I'm driving my 15-year-old truck. And I think Dave Ramsey ruined my life, but no. And interestingly enough, Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, a lot of the principles he talks about there, they're biblically based, and he bases it on financial principles that you find in the Bible.
Yeah, I just think that his philosophy is not for a family of four or family of five, in my opinion. Because when you hear these people on his podcast, they call in and I'm $100,000 in debt, and and he's like, well, what does your wife do? Like, what do you do? You don't have any kids? No. All right, well, sell everything. You're basically gonna live out of your car and eat beans and rice. I'm like, okay, well, that's not practical for a guy like me, So to me, for college students, like getting out of college in debt, I think that's an excellent philosophy. But right now, for me, I don't think it's practical. And a lot of people agree with me because they say he's kind of out of touch a little bit with the cost of living. But and plus, I got a 5-year-old, 3-year-old, and little kids in the car with my wife. I can't have her driving an old car. I mean, and we live in a society right now where everything's expensive, so I don't have the money to buy her a brand new car cash. So,
Well, let me offer a counterpoint. My wife and I, when we started this particular journey, we had 5 kids. Uh, we were both working, so she wasn't a stay at home, quote unquote, stay at home mom, but um, that we had 5 kids, and we made it work, and we weren't always able to bring ourselves to be as drastic as Dave suggests. But I think what he's presenting is an ideal, and an ideal it's a judge, right? So you're likely to never get it exactly right or do it exactly like the ideal, but the closer you can get to the ideal, and the more you use the ideal as the thing you're aiming for, um, if it's by definition a true ideal, then you will get better, you will improve, and things will be closer to what you want them to be. So I would push back a little bit and say, um, Kate and I, we struggled a lot, and we had 5 kids, and they were all teenagers at the time when we started this. And so, excuse me, young kids are expensive, but teenagers are even more expensive. And when they make mistakes, they're usually expensive mistakes, and you're still responsible for. They're much more expensive than when your 3-year-old drops the glass of milk and makes a mistake, or does, breaks a vase or something like that. So, I would say it can be done. It was about 2.5, less than 2.5 years, less than 2 years, if I recall exactly, that we were able to pay off $140,000 in debt, and get to the place where we are now, which is a place where we don't have any debt. We don't have any credit card debt, no car loans, no student loans. The house that we live in, that we purchased right before we started all this stuff, like not what Dave would recommend, but that we had built and purchased, it'll be paid off in less than 12 months.
damn.
And that's 7 years into our mortgage. And we spent the first year and almost 2 years paying off the $140,000 that we had on top of all of that. So it can be done. He absolutely is. It presents the most extreme and the most challenging path towards the goal that he's talking about. But it's a matter of how much you're willing to sacrifice. So you've got to decide every day what you're willing to sacrifice. But you got to start somewhere. And so I'll just, for example, and Dave's plan, there's no vacations until you have everything paid off. But we went on a vacation every year. So there's thousands of dollars that we spend in vacations that could have gone towards this plan we have to get completely out of debt, that would have put us months ahead of where we are. But we still were very disciplined, had a budget, started paying off our debts, and making it a priority over most other things. And we sacrificed a lot of the things that we were doing before. But once a year or so, we would say, all right, we worked really hard. Let's actually go and make some memories. And we could see where the plan was. And so maybe it delayed the plan. Maybe every vacation we took delayed the plan by a month or something. But, we sacrificed a lot. We had 5 kids at the time that lived at home. And so it wasn't easy, but it's not, it may be an ideal, which means it's super hard to achieve. But if an ideal is easy to achieve, it's not an ideal. It's just a goal or something.
Yeah.
Like Christians, if you want to be a Christian and you want to be Christ-like, good luck. He's the only perfect man that ever existed. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try, and you shouldn't be aiming for something like that. That makes sense.
True. And you don't just give up if you fall short. You
get back on track, right? Yeah. Just get back on track.
All right, 2 more questions. These are 2 good ones. What advice would you give your younger self to avoid making the same mistakes that you've already made? So basically, if you could redo it all over again, what would you change?
Oh gosh. So I'm reminded of a friend of ours, you know him, I'm not going to mention his name, but who was in the Marine Corps and talks about a drill instructor that would, when they were having trouble making a good decision about something, would say, son, the decision what you're trying to accomplish requires good judgment. And you don't get good judgment without experience. Well, and experience comes from making mistakes. And so you never get wisdom and good judgment without experience. And you may have heard it said in ways like, youth is wasted on the young, and you don't get wise until you're older. And man, wouldn't it be nice if I knew back then what I know now? But I'll tell you this, if you're younger or not so young, but if you are wondering if the things that your parents taught you, and for me, this is particularly relevant. My dad was a preacher my entire life growing up, and I grew up being taken to church and taught, all of these things in the Bible that were ideals that I couldn't imagine when I was young how those things could be true. I had all kinds of thoughts in my head that, that just can't be, I don't understand how that could be true. And the older I've gotten, the more I've learned, and the more it's become clear that those things, there really was something to them. Mm-hmm. And so I don't, it's an axiom of faith. It would have been an axiom of faith for me to believe those things, but here's the dilemma. If I had just done what they told me, I wouldn't have known what the consequences of not doing what they told me were, which is part of how I know that what they told me was true, because I suffered the consequences of not doing it, right? I could have, if I had just done what my parents had told me, I wouldn't have gone through a lot of the things I've gone through. But I also wouldn't have known that if I hadn't done those things, I would have gone through the stuff that I went through. So it's mm-hmm. sort of a dilemma. But my point to you is this. You should give some weight to people who have been through things, and wisdom that currently exists, because it's one of the things that's described as a difference between a liberal and a conservative is that, conservatives don't have to, they don't necessarily question things that they see is working. I've heard this, you may have heard the story, but I've heard it described in the analogy of two people, a conservative and a liberal, walking through a field, and they see a fence, and the liberal says, there's no reason for a fence here. Like, I don't see any reason why there should be a fence here. Why is there a fence here? Let's tear it down. And the conservative says, hold on a second. Maybe there's something we don't know that's happened, or that happens frequently, that there's a fence here for, that this fence benefits something, even though we don't know what it is. Like, it's here for a reason, perhaps. Maybe we should try to find out what the reason is before we just dispense with the fence. And so I have a personality that's more like that than some people, I guess. But I think I would tell my younger self that, hey, trust me when I tell you that a lot of this stuff they're saying, that there's something to it. And, mm-hmm. Sure, You don't know that red glowing frying pan is hot until you touch it, but it's red and it's glowing. You don't necessarily have to touch it. You can take my word for it that that's hot and it's going to burn the crap out of your hand if you touch it. And so, if you have people in your life that that share with you these things, these words of wisdom, and if you have faith in your life, then you have things like the Bible, and you have things like your conscience. And that's another thing I think I would tell myself, man, when and the Bible tells us that God's law is written on our heart, which means that's our conscience. You don't have to have ever read the Bible to do something or be about to do something and go, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. It's part of us being made in the image of God, in my opinion, that his law is written in our heart. So we have a conscience that tells us, and you will not be sorry if you don't violate your own conscience. Even if it's not a universal truth, that you should never violate your own conscience. I might feel like it's wrong for me to do something. And that's what I mean when I say by that. When I say that, I might feel like that there's something that I shouldn't do. You might not feel like that at all. But even if it's okay for you to do it, if I don't feel like it's right for me to do, I should probably not do it. And so I would tell myself not to violate my own conscience. I would tell myself to lend some more weight to the people that I knew in my life that were older and wiser and told me things that I just thought, like, y'all are old. You don't understand the way the world is today. That can't be true. I was wrong about that stuff. They were right. It was true. And so I would tell myself that, but I would also point out that life's about growing, and you learn things in different ways, and you might believe something to be true. That's true, but never know for sure that it's true. And well, the price of knowing for sure it's true is that you screwed up and found out that what you did wasn't the right way to do it, and that the consequences of this thing that somebody told you were the consequences turned out to really be the consequences, and now you know. And you wouldn't know that for sure if you hadn't done those things. You might think, well, yeah, it's what happened to him, but it won't happen to me that way. I'm better. I'm not that stupid or whatever, And so life's a dilemma. We have things, and we have indications. We have things that tell us what the right way to do things are. And if we listen to them, we can avoid the consequences, but we might also not know for sure if we were right, if we'd done that, if we'd do wrong, until we do something the wrong way and we start to learn. So I would tell myself, don't get down on yourself. And I would also this is another good thing. I would also tell myself that things are never as bad as you think they are.
Yep.
You're never as far away from getting out of the situation and things being a whole lot better. You're never as far as you think you are. Also, you're never as far away from real trouble as you think you are. So things are never as bad as they might appear. And unfortunately, the opposite's also true. Things are not always as good as they appear. And if you find yourself in a good situation, you should be grateful for it, and you should enjoy it, and you should appreciate it for the thing that it is, and be grateful for it, because things can change as good as things are. And I replied to the first question you asked me when you asked how things were going. I said, better than I deserve. Things could go horribly. None of us are promised tomorrow, right? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So be grateful for what you have, but don't be too discouraged by things that are going badly. Do what you're supposed to do. Control the things you're supposed to control and that you can control. And then things will work out in the best possible way. Here's another one that I would tell myself, is that in my experience, regardless of what the short and medium term uh, appearances seem to be for consequences for telling the truth, regardless of how bad that seems, the long term benefits of telling the truth, or at least not lying about something, way uh, are the best possible outcomes that could happen. Don't lie. Tell the truth when you to the best of your ability, and if you can't tell the truth, at least don't lie. And you might get away with it in the short term, but nobody ever gets away with anything. You don't ever get away with it just scot free.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cost you. And so, the best possible result you could have would be to always tell the truth, or at least don't lie, which I think is Jordan Peterson's number 3 rule for life, or something like that.
I think I got 4.5 minutes left. So I got one question. You think you can answer in 1 minute?
I can.
How do you know the path you've chosen is the right one? You think you can answer that in a minute?
Oh man, that's a wonderful question. Yes, I can answer it in less than a minute. I know the path I've chosen is the right one because I find purpose and meaning in it. When I became a police officer, it was clear to me at that point in time that while I'd never thought about it before in my life, this was what I was supposed to be doing. And when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're aiming up at the highest possible good you can possibly imagine, and you're taking on responsibility, and you find purpose and meaning in your life. And when you find purpose and meaning in your life, you know you're doing the right thing. You won't always succeed at what you're aiming at, but if you're aiming up at the highest possible good you can imagine, you'll find purpose and meaning in your life. And when you do, you know you're doing the right thing.
That's good advice. I got a couple of questions, just some goofy questions. Do you tip on takeout?
I tip generally, so I would say yes.
Man, that's tough for me.
I don't do much takeout.
So like if I order Buffalo Wild Wings and I got to go drive and go get it, nobody's getting a tip, man. I got out of my house, drove my gas, and to me, yeah, but I paid for it. So I mean, they got something in result. I feel awkward every time I pay because I'm like, should I or shouldn't I? That's why I always ask. So generally, if you ordered $40 worth of wings at Buffalo Wild Wings and you go pick it up, how much do you think you would tip on something like that?
$8.
Damn.
The people. What I think about is I've worked in the service industry when I was in college, and the people there aren't making very much money. And generosity will never hurt you. You will always, like karma, man. What comes around goes around. You reap what you sow. If you're generous with people, man, good things happen for you.
Well, I tip when I'm at the table eating, but other question is, do you have a favorite burger, like a place you've eaten at, like a?
Yeah. So for restaurants, people would know where there's more than one of them, kind of thing. Whataburger was my favorite. Not Whataburger. I'm sorry, take that back. Fuddruckers was my favorite when Fuddruckers was pretty common in Houston, the Houston area. I do like Whataburgers, but there's a place in just outside of Kingwood, I guess in Porter, called Pat's Burger House, and I like their burgers the best.
Is that on 494?
It is on 494, just north of Kingwood Drive. North Park.
North Park, yeah, old school burger place. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's. I think I only got an hour recording time, so we're at 58 minutes, and we got a minute left. For those who are just listening and like what you hear, subscribe. Whatever it's at down here. Share it if you like it. One more question. I don't know if you can answer it. Maybe you can. What is a woman?
An adult female human being. That's what a woman is.
So it's not on a spectrum, is what you're saying.
There is no spectrum, sir.
All right, man. You got any other? I got about 20 seconds left. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just say, Chris, I love you like a little brother. We've known each other a long time. I think about you a lot. I pray for you. I love your family. And so It's been a
Same.
pleasure. It's been a pleasure knowing you. You're one of my best friends, and I'd do anything for you. And God bless all of you guys that are listening and watching. And aim up, aim for the highest good you can imagine.
All right. That's Nothing Burger Podcast. I appreciate you, man.